And Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel, and it must remain undivided.
I continue to say that Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel, and I have said that before, and I will say it again. And I also have said that it is important that we don't simply slice the city in half.
Chairman of the International Affairs Committee of the United States House of Representatives, member from Indiana, great America.
Well, first of all, it's great to see all of you and see Dave. Dave and I were good buddies. We worked together on the Government Reform Committee for a number of years, and he was probably one of the finest congressmen we had. And I sure do miss having him around here. Wish he could come back, and maybe you'll think about doing it. We'd love to have him. I know you make more money as a doctor, but nevertheless. Dave and I and other members of Congress supported moving the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, I was involved, and I can't remember whether Dave was or not, in moving the PLO out of New York and out of the United States completely back when we had all those problems with Yasser Arafat. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that one passed, but I still feel very strongly that because of the problems in the Middle East, we shouldn't be recognizing groups that work with or are part of a terrorist organization. I won't go into great detail about some of the things I feel strongly about, but you know, we've got problems in Libya, we've had problems in Tunisia, we've had problems in Egypt, Syria, all across that area. And one of the biggest concerns that I have in Egypt, for instance, is we really don't know who we're supporting. The Muslim Brotherhood is now working with Hamas and the Palestinian organizations over there. And I'm very concerned that we may end up with a government that's anti-Israel, that doesn't live by the Camp David peace accords, and we could end up with a real conflict. I know Bibi Netanyahu pretty well, and I'm very concerned that we really, in our foreign policy decisions, make sure that we're supporting the kind of people that are going to want real peace over there in democracy, and not those who want to see the destruction of Israel. So that's where I'm coming from as far as the entire Middle East is concerned. I was a senior Republican on the Middle East the last couple of years. David promoted me to chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I ran for that, but Ileana Ross-Layton beat me by about that much. So I've had the opportunity to be the senior Republican on the Middle East subcommittee, but haven't been the chairman yet, and Ileana's doing such a great job, I doubt if I will be. Let me tell you real briefly about the bill itself. I introduced this before. Dave and I worked together in 1995 on the original bill. But here's what this bill does. This is the second year that we've introduced this legislation, and it reaffirms that the United States policy is that Jerusalem should and remain the undivided capital of Israel. This legislation closes a loophole that was put in the legislation back in 1995 that allows the embassy to remain in Tel Aviv instead of moving into Jerusalem, and that was in the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995. This bill states that the U.S. Embassy in Israel should be established in Jerusalem not later than January 1st, 2013, so it'll be a little over a year and a half from now. Congress has passed multiple resolutions with overwhelming majorities. This is not a partisan issue. Democrats and Republicans have joined together overwhelmingly to support this legislation affirming U.S.'s commitment to relocate the embassy to Jerusalem. U.S. officials conduct diplomatic meetings and business in Jerusalem in de facto recognition of its status as the capital. And every sovereign country has the right to designate its own capital, and the United States maintains its embassy in the functioning capital of every country except Israel, due to presidential waivers. And this is one of the things that really bothers me about the Congress of the United States. If we feel strongly about an issue, like the capital of Israel being in Jerusalem, I don't think we should give a president waiver authority, because many times many times presidents will say one thing, during a campaign they'll say one thing, and then when they get into office they do another. As a matter of fact, on June the 4th, 2008, when President Obama was a presidential candidate, he pledged that Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel and it must remain undivided. But since then, they have used the waiver authority to keep the embassy in Tel Aviv instead of moving it to Jerusalem. And so the administration hasn't followed through on that. We will continue to put pressure on the administration to live up to the legislation that we passed. But in the meantime, and I hope you'll take the initiative to talk to every single congressman that you can, and talk to every single senator, because they overwhelmingly voted for that act in 1995. What we need to do now is we need to make sure that we pass this legislation, which will set a date certain for them to move the capital to Jerusalem, and the administration, this administration or the next administration, will have nothing to do with it, because Congress will have spoken and the will of the people of the United States will have been made very clear that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and we're going to move it on January 1st.
Since 1991, the Unity Coalition for Israel, UCI, has educated and motivated millions of people around the world to action in support of Israel. UCI is an alliance of Christian and Jewish organizations and individuals working together to ensure the sovereignty, safety, and security of Israel, America's only reliable democratic ally in the Middle East.
We want our listeners to participate by going to uc4i.org/move.